Hello, everyone. I'm Charlie, and welcome back to another DraftKings DFS Slate breakdown. We are on to Wednesday Champions League here. And the interesting about this slate is that Barcelona would be what? The third, I think, third highest favorite on this slate, or they are the third favorite slate. It's the third favorite team on this slate. But if they were on the one on Tuesday, they'd be joint first. So it's completely different. We got Bayern at minus 900, Chelsea at minus 650 on here. Then we got like even Newcastle at minus 220. It's vastly different. Where all the games on Tuesday are all close matches, this has just kind of just blowout central with how big of a margin some of these matchups are. Starting with Barcelona minus 330, Bayern minus 900 we talked about, Chelsea minus 650, but even like Liverpool minus odds against Marseille. Newcastle we talked about a little bit already, minus 220 against PSV, Atalanta minus odds against Athletic Club, then Juve minus odds against Benfica. Every single game, I believe, is minus odds, which is just wild. Because that there's really plenty of ways to go here. Like you can really make an argument to even make a little game stack of every single one of these games, considering that they all have a team that on paper should dominate. In terms of our goal contribution odds, though, I'm going to try to speed this up a little bit here, since we went a little bit long on Tuesday. Try to keep this under 20 minutes. I try to do. But we'll just go through all the minus odds players: Rafinha, Lewandowski, Rashford, Olmo, Rooney, Bargi, Fermin Lopez, all minus odds for Barca, Bayern, Kane, Musiala, Diaz, Elise, Carl, Jackson, Gnabry, Guerrero. Like you can see the kind of trend with these like big favorites is that they have a lot of guys in favorable spots. Chelsea, Palmer, Pedro, Delap, Pedro Neto, Diu, Garnacho, Estevao, Enzo, Gittins, George. Like it's just really wild, some of these odds. Liverpool, Marseille, Ekatike, Newcastle and PSV, Voltamato, Wisa, Barnes, Murphy, Alanga, Gordon. Just like look at how stacked these like matchup odds are. Just utterly unreal. Atalanta, everyone's plus odds. Juve, everyone's plus odds. But yeah, other than those two games, every game has a guy who's minus goal, at least one. A lot of them five or six minus odds get a goal contribution. So yeah, just utterly absurd numbers. In terms of our projected lineups and set pieces, though, starting with Atalanta, it should be Bernasconi, and I'd guess Epicasta splitting. It's usually Zalewski if he starts, but he's just not in projected for whatever reason, not out or anything. So we'll just see. I think there's even a chance that Bernasconi has like a monopoly, which could make him super appealing. Then for Athletic Club, it's mostly Baron Gare, although Nico Williams, Jared Ithar, all hop on a set piece here and there as well. Bayern and Union. Bayern should be Olise and Kimmich. Union should be mostly El Hajj, although Zorgane can sometimes hop on something as well. Chelsea and Papos. Chelsea should be Reece James and Pedro Neto in this lineup. And Papos should be mostly Orsic, I guess. Juventus should be Conceição and Yildiz splitting mainly, although Cambiasso can kind of hop on a corner anytime. You don't really ever know with them completely. Like they'll have a bunch of guys who take typically. It's not like a true split by any means. And then Benfica should be mostly Sudakov. Marseille, Liverpool. Marseille should be Emerson and Greenwood splitting in this team. Liverpool should be probably a showstopper monopoly with no Gakpo in projected. We'll see if that ends up being correct. Newcastle and PSV. Newcastle should be Lewis Hall and Trippier splitting. If we go off of what they did last game, however, we got like Tonali, Bruno Guimaraes. They all can just hop on randomly. They're another team that kind of swaps off their set piece takers quite a bit. And then PSV should probably be a Veerman monopoly. Slavia Prague and Barca. Slavia should be mostly Sadilek, although Kuse, Probode, I wouldn't be surprised if either of those guys ended up with a decent little share. And then Barca should be Rafinha and Rashford splitting in this team, although Fermin, Pedri, they have taken a few corners in the past as well. Now, in terms of our pricing here, of course, we have Lamine Yamal, who's priced the most, and he is suspended for this game. So we have no him to deal with at that 11,400. It's a lot easier than having to deal with Mbappe, who we had on Tuesday, where the answer was playing him absolutely for 12K. He was a lock and load. 2 goals. I think he was in the optimal by far. But the most expensive guy in this slate, like you're not going to get anyone more expensive than Elise at 11K, and he's a little bit different than Mbappe. You can see since he has a little bit more of a floor, so it's a lot easier seeing him get there than an Mbappe, who maybe has a ceiling of like 10 points, say. Elise. Oh, I guess we'll just talk about that when we go to his pricing. But forwards first here. With Yamal out, Rashford is the most expensive forward at 10,600. His logs are pretty good. Like he's a solid player. I have no issue with him other than a little bit inconsistent minutes. But saying that, with Yamal out, a little bit less competition there. So he's completely fine. Same with Rafinha. It's kind of interesting that Rafinha is priced cheaper than Rashford. Neither are cheap by any means, but Rafinha is usually the guy who's more expensive in this scenario, I suppose, just because he just hasn't played a ton, hasn't done a ton in his minutes either, yet to get a goal contribution. But I think it is a good bounce back spot if he's good enough to start. He is dealing with a knock and has been questionable for several weeks now. What does he got? What do they have? Thigh, medically all clear and back though, so he should be good to go. I think both those are completely fine. I think the Bayern pieces, Diaz, Kane. Kane is, I'd say, underpriced compared to Luis Diaz, or you can say Diaz is overpriced. Like Diaz should not be more than Kane in any scenario, is my point here. So I like that. What about Kane's goal contribution odds? I forgot to mention that they were pretty extreme, right? I'm sure. Uh, Minus what, 425? Yeah, it's more than Mbappe was. So Kane's underpriced here. I like him a lot. Other guys, Estevao, who I think is overpriced at 10K, but he's fine. Greenwood, I don't mind in GPP formats. Same with Yildiz. These guys on outside of Chelsea, Barca, and Bayern, I think are all pretty decent differentials since they're also going to be low owned. People are going to flock towards your Barca, Chelsea, Bayern pieces here, and for good reason with how juiced those matchups are. But Gnabry's a little bit interesting considering he's a little bit more cheaper than your Kane and Diaz. But there's a pretty big discount there, so he makes some sense here. Salah, if he ends up good to go, that could be interesting at 8,300. Had corners, remember, before he went to AFCON, which chance that he ends up picking that up again. Gakpo at 7,600, he's pretty cheap. I think he's an all right play if he starts. And then Chelsea guys, of course, Neto, uh, Pedro, I'm sorry, and Pedro Neto, both great spots. I think it's a really phenomenal Pedro Neto spot. He should be up there with your Rashfords, your Gamals, just because of this Paphos matchup here. And he's got just crosses a ton. I know his logs aren't the best here, but he's had a pretty brutal couple matchups, like Barcelona, Bayern, is very tough games. I think it's Paphos where should have like really good opportunity to rack up a ton of floor, just in corners and just Chelsea dominating. And you just hope for a couple of contributions, and suddenly like he can really be the highest scoring forward on the slate wouldn't surprise me at all. So the fact that he's this much cheaper than a lot of these other options, I think he's a lock here, frankly speaking. However, other guys I consider, Raspadori at 6K. He might have some set pieces if he starts. I think he's kind of interesting. Ekitike at 5,600. He's always kind of underpriced on Champions League slates. Hasn't shown his best stuff, but I believe in the player. So I'm happy to go to him in PvP formats. Voltamata at 5,400, I think, is super cheap as well. Another guy who's been a little bit out of form, but this is a good bounce back spot here, and 5K is just cheap for him. Other punt forwards that I consider Delap if he starts, I think, is super appealing. Another guy with that Chelsea matchup, just very much cheaper than a lot of the other Chelsea attackers. And then anyone else down here who I'd consider, I missed Baron Gare, who I want to give a quick mention to. 50, oh, he's out for this game, so don't worry about that. That changes up set pieces for that team as well. It should mostly be Nico Williams if Berenguer doesn't go, although Jared Isar also in the mix, of course, as well. And anyone else down here who I'd think about? Not a ton, frankly. I think it's a slate where you're only tempted to pay up. Like you're going Pedro Neto for one in like 95% of your teams, or you should be. And if you go like another pay up forward is very tempting, right? Like Neto King, I think, is going to be a super popular start at forward, and for good reason. The Rafinha too, you could even throw in there any combo like those guys, I think it makes a ton of sense here. And like I said, it's gonna really make the rest of these players overlooked, but for good reason, like we talked about. Midfielder now, Elise 11K. I think he's going to be the far and away most popular midfield start just because he's awesome. Like he's got great floor, great upside. He's a guy that I feel a lot more comfortable going than Mbappe in most cases just because of that floor. Like he's not going to kill you. Like 9 points is not great for 11K, but like you can still get away with playing that depending on how like the guys you go around him work. So yeah, Elise I love here. I think he's a great player. So he's a good option. Szoboszlai 9,400. I think it's a little bit pricey, but he's been pretty good in Champions League as well. Like, look at those logs. He only had one game where he said under 20 points. That's pretty crazy. Marseille's a pretty tough matchup is the only thing. And Cole Palmer, I'm pretty interested in. Hasn't had his best stuff, but it's just I don't think he scored an open play goal in who knows how long. But the goal contribution equity is there. The pen equity, of course, he always seems to get one. of course, have those two, and yeah, like this is a good bounce back spot for him for really any of these Chelsea guys. So yeah, Cole Palmer I think is an interesting option. No set pieces probably, but he has a flourish in foul rounds, shots. He finds a way there more often than not. Trying to get to like a minimum 8 points. And he's certainly get a goal contribution. He's really up there in points. So I think he's a solid play. Other guys I'd consider down here, not a ton. Bierman, I don't mind just raw set pieces. Sudakov, same with him, a little bit more attacking than a Bierman, but Juve is a little bit of a tougher matchup. Or not really, actually. Juve is a better matchup than Newcastle, so I think Sudakov solid. Zalewski, if he starts at 5,800, I think that makes some sense. If you want to take a chance on the Newcastle guys like Tonali at 5,400, could be worth a risk. Zappacosta, if he's a defender, I'd be a little more interested in. At mid, kind of whatever. Zagroba, if he starts, sure. I wanted to mention Conceição. I missed it. I mean, 6,300-ish. Yeah, right there. I think he's interesting forward as well. Kind of like more of a mid-range play. Just a cheap set piece taking attacker who I can definitely get behind. Other mids here, lower down that I'd consider Zagroba. If he starts, yes, I'm in there for that. Should it's him and Conceição are very similar players, so I just like that he's a little bit cheaper. Pro Vote and GPP, I'd be a little bit interested in if you see no like Sadilek, like he has big scores in him. If you give him set pieces, I think he becomes a little bit more interesting of a play. And Barcelona, we've seen how leaky they can be at the back, so he'd be interesting to be super low owned. Goretzka, if he starts at super cheap Bayern exposure, he's a set piece threat as well. He's a big, just giant body. Gets on a lot of headers. So he is kind of interesting. Sadilek is cheap set pieces, sure, even with that Barca matchup. Rui Bargi, if he starts, I think that's a super, super tempting play. I know it hasn't done a ton, but for 3K, probably take some set pieces. I'd be super interested in that. Below that, I'm just not seeing a ton, frankly. Maybe Adzic, if he starts, sometimes has some set pieces, so he's worth a mention, I suppose, but not a ton there. Super low. And defender here is not the greatest defender slate. All the good ones ended up being on that Tuesday slate. Like we got no Grimaldo, no Di Marco, no Pedro Porro. Now we've got Guerrero, who is interesting only because he gets pretty far forward for this Bayern team. He's basically just a hope for a goal contribution kind of play. Frankly, his floor isn't the greatest despite being a fullback. Like a nine, I think is generous for him. That was against Paphos too, who is the team you want to pick against. Like I don't really see him getting really huge floor numbers. Also, gets subbed quite a bit here. And it also depends where we see him play. Like he can play up to like this attacking mid position, wouldn't surprise me at all. So watch come lineups where they have him. At right back though, I don't have a ton of interest, frankly, despite his pretty good goal contribution odds. I think that is baked a little bit in them, assuming that there's a chance he plays further forward. So watch where he plays. Then Reece James, 6,500, who is kind of the best set piece taking option on the slate, I will say, with that Paphos matchup. A great opportunity for floor. The issue is he's a guy who doesn't really cross a ton from open play. He's not like a Grimaldo who just gets up there and just whips it in. He's a little more of a possession-based player. Like he'll kind of recycle the ball a lot when they play it out to him on his side. He'll come inside too, in like the midfield a little bit. Like he'll invert, so that gives even less opportunity to cross. But with this matchup, like decent chance of getting a goal contribution off of a set piece, say, I'd be tempted by that at 6,500 for sure. And Trippier, I like on paper. I'm a little bit worried about him getting up there in age. He went 90 last game. There's a chance they sub him. We don't know what they're going to do with set pieces a lot of the time too. I'd be tempted to go to a Reece James over to a Trippier, but I think they're both all right options. Cancelo, if he starts 5,700, I like him as a player. Another guy who really bombs with the field. Not really a crosser per se, but like he gets goal contributions, he takes shots, gets ballad runs. He kind of finds a way a lot of the time. Not like traditional fullback points, but like he just gets there. Cheaper defenders that I'd be tempted by Emerson, cheap set pieces there, and Bernasconi, who I like a lot here. I know he has not been great in Champions League, but you look at some of his Serie A numbers, he's been a lot more appealing here. He gets like averages 10 points or so a game in that. And with all these like Atalanta fullbacks who are injured or out, or Bellanova and Bakker mainly, it gives him a little bit more opportunity to get a little bit more minutes than he's been getting. Like they had to play, I think, Musa at wing back instead. So that I think helps him a little bit. He goes 90 a little bit more in Serie A than you see in these Champions League games. So I'd be tempted by that. Lower than him, guys, I'd consider. I think he's Chelsea, like weird center back, fullback-ish plays. Like if he starts Achimpong, who if he starts will probably be at the expense of Reece James. So we'll see what they do with that. But I think he's pretty cheap. Like the center backs in general, like Hato, if he starts 2,900, I'd like that. I talked about Achimpong. Even like the center backs in general, like Wesley Fofana, Babashile. Any of these center backs on like the big favorites here, I think makes some sense. And then one other guy who I think is interesting is Hiroki Ito, who I know I saw when I was perusing earlier, right there, 3,100. Has no sample size really in Champions League, but he's been playing fullback for Bayern. Had a long-term injury if you've forgotten, so he didn't play 10 minutes early on into his Bayern career. But he's just interesting for just cheap Bayern exposure. Gets decently up the field. He's not a guy who's going to drop 15 floor. But you just hope for a guy to luck in on a goal contribution on Bayern. I mean, you have him wide too, so maybe it's a couple crosses in there. But I'm interested in that for sure at 3,100. And then goalkeeper, I think it's just whatever. Who is the highest scoring? I assume probably either Jaros or Rui Silva, probably, which is kind of wild to think about. So yeah, goalkeeper, it's just a lottery. It really is. And then in terms of a core, I'm putting Michael Olise here, and I'm going Pedro Neto as the first two names in. And then I'd be tempted to put like a Kane, like a Rafinha, but I'm actually going to go to Hiroki Ito as the final piece here. I'd ideally go Neto in that forward slot too, but I suppose it's up to interpretation. Just because I like the salary relief there. Reece James would be a tempting option as well, although it hamstrings your salary a little bit. Although like I wouldn't be mad at doing that either. It's between one of those two, but I think they're both good options. Yeah, guys, that's all I got. Good luck, and I will see you for the next one. Peace.